Great. Yeah, really, this should be quick. I have a few things. My name is Tom. I want to talk about Convex, the company that I work at, and the backend as a service product that we create, and Effect. And a goal is to hit these points. This is more for myself. Right, I'm going to say that, hey, this is what Convex is. I'm going to tell you about how some of the things we worry about at Convex are similar to the things in Effect, and some of them are the same, which makes me think, great, probably we should use Effect. And then I'll give away that we're not using it as either part of our core API or even internally. And then I'll tell you that our customers are asking for it. And that's customers plural. And it's not as many as ask for you, but it's more than ask for some other esoteric things. Like it's up and coming. What do we do about that? We'll see if we're going to bring into those things. I'm really new with Effect. The reason I know about Effect is that one of our customers, RJ, was on a call about a year ago, and so we're a little different then, and I was helping him through some code, and I looked at this code, and I said, oh, that's unfamiliar, but it reminds me of this, it reminds me of that. Like I can imagine you've got an either here, I know what that is, right? This looks a little bit like things I am familiar with, and I could imagine what it was, but you have to tell me about it. And that has been then once you know about it, right, once you know about an abstraction, you start to see it at work. I heard about from this customer. So Convex is this backend as a service. You write some TypeScript and you send it to us, and then we run it for you as backend endpoints. And there's some cool things about it, but basically it's TypeScript, right? And so Effect is the perfect place there. We don't need to do any integration at all for this to be useful for our customers. Our customers can use any NPM package. It's not quite true. They can use lots of NPM packages, and they should run in our little custom V8 runtime that should be mostly like Cloudflare workers, so most stuff should work, but then some stuff doesn't work. But Effect works great. Effect works great in this environment. Convex is cool because we give you reactive updates. You write an imperative query function that's JavaScript, TypeScript. We say TypeScript now instead of JavaScript, but the reason it's TypeScript is that V8 isolates the great runtime. That's a thing we want to be running for our customers. And it's popular. It's a thing people would like to express their code in. You send us your TypeScript code, and then we run it, and then we do some cool, we have deterministic runtime so that we can run your code deterministically and track the read sets in the tables and indexes of the database that we host. And then we know when any of those ranges are modified, if row is deleted or added, or row is edited from there. When that happens, we know to rerun that query, and we can send you a WebSocket message down a WebSocket channel and tell you, hey, your React code should re-render right now because the query result for the query that you sent us has changed. It's trying to be generally useful backend, but of course, TypeScript's great because the backend and the front end can be the same language. You can do the cool, like, take the types that you used on the backend and use them in the front end as long as you can figure out serialization for the subset of types you support, and it just works. It's great. And the same, I want to say the same vein of problems that Effect is solving. So we're trying to do transactional updates. And I say the same vein because there are things that happen, you see at scale, and you start to realize, oh shoot, that was only a 99% solution. When you multiply that out, it becomes an 80% solution. Or it becomes, I can never get through a full user session without having some kind of edge casey thing happen. Convex was started by a bunch of database engineers from Dropbox. I worked at Dropbox too. I was not a database engineer there. I've been more on the front end side, telling them about how some of this front end stuff works. And at scale, for all of us, it doesn't matter what you're back in the front end, but anything as it gets to scale, and scale can even just be a lot of function calls. It doesn't even have to be a bunch of requests per second. Stuff starts to fail. You have to think about edge cases. So things we're thinking about are transactional updates. Maybe when a React component updates, it's important that every component in that React tree updates to the same timestamp, the same logical timestamp of data. You don't want a bunch of different use effects or even a bunch of different React query-oriented or coordinated requests that were made at different timestamps, and then you try to stitch that data together on the front end. And maybe the different timestamps means you lose referential integrity from your foreign key IDs. And what I just said is a lot of words that people get along fine without this concept, right? And I want to say it's similar with Effect. You can get along fine without Effect, and then you start to care about some of these things, and then you start to deal with those things, and then you say, wow, if I was going to have to write all those except clauses, if I was going to have to account for all those edge cases, Effect is sure nice for doing that in a more cohesive way. We're doing other stuff. It doesn't matter what it is. There's just stuff that we're thinking about that is sort of edge case. It's sort of stuff you care about at scale when you're doing your prototype you might not think about. And I just said a belief in a new way of doing things. I changed it to it's a bet on doing things in a slightly new way. Right? So there are some things about Convex that are kind of confusing and new, and there's some things about effect that are kind of confusing and new. Ooh, this is more criticism of my company, but maybe it can be phrased differently for effect. For us, it's there's this library called Wrapped Query, and they have this one API, and we'll use some of that, but we think we can do it better. And then you wait a little while, you wait a year, and you realize, oh, they were probably right about some of this stuff. And you change it and make it look more like the idiomatic practices of the community. And an effect is, in ways, it's not idiomatic. And I would say it's not, it doesn't look idiomatic, or it's not what's currently called idiomatic. But what that word means is just what other people are doing. Right? It's not a value judgment. It is, if you look at a percent of the source code on GitHub that is written in JavaScript or TypeScript, the larger percent of it's not using effect. Okay, how am I going to translate these idioms? So there's something to learn there. And that's the same situation we're in with Convex. And sometimes at Convex we're solving the same problems, or dealing with the same problems. Schema validation is the one that's come up, and later I'll get to how one of our customers is trying to use effect schema validation instead of our schema validation and translating between them, and how can we support that? But these are problems we think about a lot. Round-trippable serialization. Maybe if you have a schema, you should be able to get into and out of it, and ideally a property test would enforce that. We have to express concurrency because our runtime is, people send in queries. They write a query like, oh, I kind of want to give me all the users who signed up in the last day, and then join that with all of the documents that they've created in that time. But what a join looks like for us, it's not something you push down to the database, it's something you run in JavaScript, where you say, all right, for every one of those IDs, go fetch the document. And that's a bunch of concurrency. I have to deal with the fact that I'm trying to throw off, say, 200 promises to go fetch all of those. And the structured concurrency you get from effect would be great for this. And it's so a problem we could solve with effect, we don't right now. Gosh, and then not just in the API, but so I mostly work with Rust, but I probably write the least Rust at my company because I have to write all these JavaScript lines. But other people have to write TypeScript, JavaScript too, and they're all kind of Rust programmers, and then they come and they see a promise and they get real confused. They just expect to have to drive execution of it. They do not expect it to be eager. And so they are pretty excited when I tell them, hey, there's this library that I have not added to our list of dependencies yet that does behave the way you would want. And there are reasons why you might design it that way. It would be really useful. So I think effect could be really successful. And this is not in the API we provide our customers, but in the code that we work on at work when we're building the infrastructure. But we're not ready to recommend it to customers. What we mean by recommend it is we are not going to make it the default part of the API. When a new customer comes to Convex, they're saying, all right, you're going to tell me about this wacky stuff, this deterministic runtime, you've got these ideas of queries and mutations, and you're telling me I'm not allowed to use map.random, you're telling me I have to structure my code in this weird way. And I want that list to stop before I have to say, oh, and there are these cool tools you can use, right? It looks a little funny. I don't want it to also look funny in those ways. But it is a thing, so we're not ready to force it on our customers at least, but they want it. We have customers that say, hey, when are you going to come out with an effect thing? Or even better, I would like to write the effects wrapper for Convex. And again, you can use effects with Convex today, it's just TypeScript, but there's always that interface, right? If you're writing a serverless function, then it's maybe a relatively short function. And at the beginning, you get some inputs, and at the end, you have some outputs. And so maybe a proportionally larger amount of your code would be spent interfacing between the effect world and the non-effect world. So it makes sense you want a wrapper so you can natively, simply get those effect types. And when I look at the code that the guy RJ has implemented to bring effect in the context, it's nice. It's the code I'd rather write here. It's not what I want at the top of my funnel when I'm trying to get users to make our engagement numbers go up, but it is the thing that I would like to be writing myself. Yeah, RJ has been doing this integration work. I'm going to show off some of this. Do I have anything else? And then because I'm going to put the slides away in a sec, I want to say this now. So one of the issues that he's come up with is, gosh, effect schema is a neat way to express schemas. And the times in our system at Convex when I need to do that are when I'm getting data from the database, when I'm taking data, getting data as input from a client as arguments, and when I'm returning data out from a API endpoint and sending it back to the client. And then on the client, when I'm deserializing that thing into something I can use, or on the client when I'm calling something and serializing it. And so a piece that I just on my wish list a little bit is like, all right, how do I share this effect schema between the front end and the back end in a programmatic way? Because this is a classic thing where you write a programming language or a tool or a library, and then it turns out, shoot, I need bundler integration to really do this right. And I'm not asking for the bundler integration yet, but maybe we need some code gen. Like, all right, could there be a little bit of code gen here? Is there a way that I could share these types in a way? Is there a way I can describe the types that I want within the Convex API, SDK, or using old words, to express what types I want on the client server? That's probably all the slides, right? Great. So I want to show, I can show Convex briefly. Convex is exciting, but it's not what we're here for. Convex is pretty neat. I read a little app here, and I changed some data, and I said hello TS effect, which is wrong. It's effect TS, right? Just effect. Hello effect. Forget the GitHub repo name. Hello effect. And updates live, right? Because we're monitoring this query that was part of the read set. We send a WebSocket message down here, and it's here. You can't read it, but it says hello effect somewhere down there. And the code for this looks like when I hit, you didn't see me use it yet. If I come back here and I type something down here, I hit enter, what's happening is that I am executing this mutation in here called send message. This is all not effect code, notice, but you might see things that you could use effects to do this. I have to specify, hey, my args have this format, and we made up we've made up our own little schema thing because we had our own needs and we thought we needed to do that. In here, I say unpack body and author from the arguments and insert into the messages table something of this format. And then that would have invalidated the query, which is up here, which just lists all the messages by gathering these up. And ooh, here's some promise.all message mapping. This is the kind of thing that we look at. Now let's look at how RJ has figured out how to do this in effect. Well, sorry, let's give it a little more time. We get a bunch of messages, we have to join those, and it's this in-memory join where we say, great, and then go find all the corresponding images for all of those. And then mostly I want to give props to RJ because he's cooperating a lot with us, saying, hey, I really want to use effect. The value effect brings RJ, and now some other people that have not talked to about it, but have asked for it in Discord for integration with effect. They're pretty excited about it. Let's see. So what RJ did, a few different things, but one of the things he had to do was compile an effect schema into our schema. And he just does that in memory. That's something you could do with CodeGen, but works fine. Well, let's not go through the code, but it's kind of nice code. I'd like to write compilers and things in effect here. And then he just made up a totally new API for these convex functions. So now if I have a mutation, I say things like, let's pipe for each of the things in, we don't get to click it, for each of the tables in the schema, I went, some casting here, and then do this thing, this pipe. You have a controlled concurrency where it can say, you only want me to do 200 promises at once in your runtime. Great, I can take care of that. That'll work. And I think that's what I've got. Basically, it is the passion that RJ has shown in taking this initiative and saying, like, look, I'm excited about Convex, I'm really excited about effect. I'd like to use these together. I'm going to do a lot of extra work from our perspective. So he could just use our built-in things to use effect has been really inspiring. And then to see some of this code, it really is nice. And then to have to tell him, oh, that is really cool, but we can't use that. That's not going to be our default because our thing is already too scary. We have to keep it familiar to what people are used to. But how do we make that the next step? How do we expand this community, this effect ecosystem, to include, oh yeah, here's the wrapper for this, here's the wrapper for that. Here is, you're trying to do this thing, great. Maybe you need to integrate it yourself, but most of the time there's already something there that does that. And on the implementer side, or on the thing that's trying to be implemented with, what can I do, or what can we do to expose these hooks to make it possible to do this? And that's just a question, because I don't know. I mean, we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to say, well, we can expose these things, we can make this pluggable, we can have all these insertion hooks. And then what he's done right now is pretty good already, so maybe that's good enough, but it would be cool to have the code gen. Anyway, so no moral, that's where I'm at. Convex, I think, is neat. Effect is pretty cool, and I think both projects are trying to sweat the details a bit. They're trying to figure out how we can solve some of these, 1% cases that multiply out into all the time cases. Actually, you're always going to get these modified backoffs. And then this will happen, and then how do you deal with these at scale? And for us, it's kind of another kind of scale where we're really saying, oh, these transactional updates really matter. And once you get there, you're willing to trade off some of the idiomaticity, that property of it looking like everyone else to accomplish something greater. So that's it.